Wow, that was quite an intro. Thank you so much. Tony studied my bio really well. I really appreciate it. It's actually my honor, really, to be here. As Tony said, I've only been in Long Island for about a year and a half. When we joined Henry Schein, I say we because I'm going to share a little bit about my family. And, you know, I obviously give talks often in my roles and my previous roles, but one of my least favorite things to do is to do what the team asked me to do today, but I'm going to have fun with it anyway, because I think many of us have a hard time talking about ourselves and our journey. At the same time, I have learned so much from other senior leaders, both women and men, as well as mentees and other mentors that I've had. I think one of my key tenets for myself is that I'm a learning leader over the years. I think you learn something new every day. And so it's my pleasure really to be here and to have this conversation with you. And I look forward to meeting more of you. And big congratulations to the honorees today. Very, very excited for all of you. So I actually am typically a bit of a wanderer on stage, but one of my colleagues put together a great opening slide, and I have a few notes I don't want to miss. So I may take the mic around and wander. I'm not often standing still. But I wanted to share, just in the context of what we're talking about today, a bit of a timeline slide. You know, Teresa talked in her opening about inclusion and the importance of that, and I think the timeline really demonstrates some of the milestones along the way in the journey to equality. And I'm going to point out just a couple. And, you know, I think the quote that's been said quite often is the only time you should look back is to see how far you've come. And I think this is really a fitting quote as we celebrate the achievements of our honorees today. So there's a couple. If you think back, way back in 1938, it was a milestone in the Fair Labor Standards Act. Now, this really drove the opportunity to create standards in minimum wage and overtime. You know, that was key. But then you jump forward to 1967, the executive order that banned discrimination in hiring and compensation on the basis of gender. In 72, obviously one that we're all familiar with, Title IX, which prohibits discrimination in any federally funded activity or program. You know, when I went to high school, there was only, and I grew up in Montreal, there was only one women's sport team, and it was basketball, and I was blessed with height, so I had the opportunity to play. And I think about my children who've had the opportunity to do whatever they want, thanks to Title IX, so really, really critically important. All of these things, I think, opened the doors to where my journey began in 1986, which was the year that I graduated from undergrad. And my team made me do this, sorry, but this was the big hair 80s. So this is my college roommate and I. And look at that hair. I had a perm with this thick hair. So this is my husband, Eric, and I, and our first dog together. But really, this is where it all started, right? And it's still being defined. I mean, in 1986, Newsweek publication about the challenge women had. You know, how were they figuring out this balance between work and family? Does anybody remember this movie with Diane Keaton? Baby Boom, right? She was a management consultant. Tiger Lady, I think, was her nickname in this movie. She inherited a baby, figuring out how to make it work. This was all in the context of our time. Working Women, really groundbreaking in 1986, launched the program to think about the top companies for women to work, which created a tremendous amount of competitive spirit and pressure, which lives today as they recognize the top 100 companies for women to work. So I just, setting the stage for the context, I think, around the time that I started my career. I will tell you a couple of stories along the way, and I'll share one that hopefully doesn't offend anyone, but I think it's just kind of an element of what was happening back in those days. So my first job when I graduated University of Florida was selling payroll services for ADP. And I went into a training program. It was a great program. I was living in South Florida at the time, and I was one of 11 teammates, and you can guess what gender the other 10 were. With all due respect to my male colleagues, I was the only one. And we were all about high performance, and every Monday we would come in for what was called roll call. Everybody had to come in and talk about how much they sold that week. So my first Monday, we come in and we all made our budget, our forecast for the week. And my manager, who was really, I thought, a really strong leader, took out of his pocket a bunch of singles, and he gave every man in the room 100 singles to go to the strip bar. True story. And he gave me $100 and said, go have fun, whatever you want to do with it. And that was, at the time I grew up with 2 older brothers, and I was used to being one of the guys. And it really didn't strike me until I looked back as to how far we've come, and yet still how far we have to go. So I just want to start a bit with the punchline. Oops. Okay. So these are the lessons that I've learned over my career, and I'm going to come back to this at the end. But they really are as important as we all are for each other, to support each other. As important as all of these efforts are, externally and internally, at the end of the day, it's really up to you to own so much of your career. I think you make your own way. You have to tell your own story. Don't let anybody else tell it for you. And I'm going to share a couple notes on these. Create your own path. It's not just skill or smarts. It has a lot to do with luck and mentorship and sponsorship and how you use the people around you. And really, you are unique. You need to find what's right for you, because if you live your passion, it will show through and give you inspiration and give others inspiration. One of the wonderful things, I was not familiar with Athena before the team asked me to share this talk today, so I met the team and did a little bit of research. And one of the key leadership tenets of the model of Athena is something that I really, really connect with, and that is to live authentically. When you know me at home as one of my best friends or family, and you know me at work, we're not that much different. I live the way I love to live. So, I've been 30 years in the workforce, and for me, living authentically has come down to making my career choices around 3 things. I had a mentor who told me, go home every night and figure out what you love to do, what was great about that day. You have a bad day, we all have bad days. What didn't you like about that day? Really start to look internally and gain insight as you move in your career. It's not about you going to someone and say, how do I grow up to be you? It's about how you grow up to be me, right? And the 3 things for me that I found that I loved were really leading and growing teams, being in healthcare, because for me that's a great purpose, and taking something that's complex, murky, and complicated and leaving it better. Creating a new growth story. So those are the 3 things that have guided me along the way. And this is really the heart of the people and animals in my life that guide me. So I love the picture in the top left, because that's how I still see my 26 and 21-year-old in my heart. And that's Hannah and Hunter. That's them today on Mother's Day. That's on one of my business trips on the far right, which is one of the pleasures of global travel. If you do it as your kids get older, make a day here and there and bring them with you. That's my daughter with me in Italy this year, or just this past year in 2017. My husband Eric and I, who's been my rock and support along the way, we've been married for 28 years, and our 3 dogs. So always loved dogs, and now I get to run an animal health company as part of my responsibility. So it's really a wonderful thing. So just to give you a bit of what I call, when I think about when I interview folks, I feel like you get their 2-dimensional resume, right? You get the resume that from start to end, what did I do and how did I get here? And then there's the 3-dimensional resume. There's everything behind who you are and how you got there. But just so you understand kind of my 2-dimensional resume, this was how I grew up in my career. As Tony said, 17 years with Johnson & Johnson, and then 4.5 years with Boston Scientific, and Henry Schein the last 1.5 years. And my background was relatively traditional. sales and marketing. I had portfolio management, business development, lots of different experiences internationally. I never lived internationally, but led teams outside the US directly for many, many years. And I think one of the key learnings for me was, my husband reminds me of this all the time, I never grew up saying, I want to lead a P&L. I want to be a president. I never did. In fact, he still reminds me that I would come home conflicted. Boy, they've just asked me to take a director of marketing job. Do you think I can still be a good mom and go do this? I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that. I don't want to be a VP. I see how that person works. I'm not going to be able to do that. But along the way, I stayed true to my heart. I raised my hand, and I said, I'm going to go try it, because each one of the roles I took actually had an element of what I loved. And so the bit about the 3D side is, you know, the real world backstory. I thought I would share a few lessons that I learned along the way. So the first one, bombing the interview. So how many people in here have bombed an interview? Come on, honestly, raise your hands. Okay, not enough, I don't know. I think you still have one to come then, if you haven't bombed an interview. Tony, you've bombed one, see? And you landed in a good place. So I was in sales at the time. I had a marketing background. I was in South Florida making a really good living in medical devices, and I really wanted to get a marketing role. But every company that I'd worked for said, great, you can come move to like Glens Falls, New York, and we'll cut your salary in half and bring your whole family, and come on, you can do that. And I never wanted to take that risk. It wasn't right for our family at the time. And so we acquired a company in Miami, a cardiovascular company, and I went to my sales director and I said, gee, I'd really love to go meet the VP of marketing to explore some roles. He said, great, I'll connect the two of you. So I thought I was walking into a networking meeting. I walk in with my questions and my notebook in hand. I sit down and he says, great, and he starts interviewing me aggressively and heavily. How are you going to turn this product line around? How are we going to sell more? What's your marketing strategy? And I really, I didn't have, at the time, the foresight to say, hand raised, this was not my expectation, my apologies, I'm not prepared. So I left, completely screwed it up, went home, and said, no, 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 I'm not going to leave it like that. And I called him, and I explained to him the situation. I told him I very much was interested in coming back for an interview, and to his credit, he gave me another shot, and I got the job. And you know, we all have little forks in the road, and to me, going into marketing was my fork in the road, because it was my first strategic opportunity to help do something different. I thought, you know what, I can help bring my customers, my 50 customers in my territory, some great solutions for their patients, or I can help create some globally some new products and new strategies. So that was just the first one. And you know, the lesson learned there is, again, you know, there's lots of times in your life that you'll be uncomfortable, and I think that's the theme. Be uncomfortable, raise your hand, make your own way. I, on the same token, was a director of marketing, and our sales in a different part of the company were going down aggressively. And the senior executive committee said, we're going to run an all-day workshop. We're going to bring in talent from around the organization and customers. We're going to bring in some consulting firms. I don't think it was KPMG. We're going to bring in some folks to just, but it should have been. We're going to bring in some folks to help us. And so I volunteered, went in, and I helped kind of moderate a session, which helped those leaders, and I didn't have this thinking in mind, but because I was visible, it helped them see new capabilities that I had, bringing connections of people together and doing something good for the company. And so I was pulled ahead and said, you would do great over here in this international assignment. Will you come join us? So again, raising your hand. The third one is, and I mentioned earlier, don't let someone tell your story for you. This happens frequently to women. I still, unfortunately, sit in meetings where this happens, and I make sure that I raise my hand to ensure it doesn't. And this is about an assignment comes up, and you're sitting in a meeting, and in this case, this was, for me, there was a VP opportunity in Boston in marketing and sales that was right up my alley. I was a director in Miami with a husband and 2 young children. When my name came up in that meeting, what do you think people said? She's not going to move. Her husband has a job and she has 2 young kids. Why would she move? Don't let people tell your story. Now, again, I don't think I knew the definition of the word sponsorship, but I had reached out on my own once my husband and I had made a decision that we were mobile and went around and connected with folks around the company to let it be known, including my manager, but not limited to my manager, that I had aspirations to move and would love opportunities to talk when those came up. And luckily for me, the next time that happened, I had the opportunity to do so. So find your sponsors and create your own story. The last thing I want to share, and I can talk about this now because it's far enough in the rearview mirror, is that life happens. It's how you respond that matters. I've had a couple of situations in my life, both of them life-changing, and both of them very scary. And most recently in 2013, about 6 months after I joined Boston Scientific, as the president of a $1 billion division with 3,000 employees around the world, I was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer and knew I would have to go into very aggressive treatment. And I share this not because I'm very happy, knock on everything, to be a survivor, as I know many of us are and families are in different stages of our lives, but because it actually taught me a really wonderful business lesson. I had been there. I had not yet met my sales teams around the globe. It was January, and we were getting ready the next week to fly around the world and be with our sales leaders to kick off our strategy with my management team of 18 for 2013. And I was diagnosed, came into my office and thought, oh my God, what do I do? I had to go into surgery the next week. It was pretty immediate. And I connected with my VP of HR. I connected with my husband. I said, I think I'm going to be able to stay here and go through treatment, but I can't go to these meetings. I don't know what to say. And the advice I got was, this is up to you. It's a very private matter. Maybe you'll just say, Karen's unable to join us. Unfortunately, she has something to deal with and she'll be back. And my fear was, when I talked to a few members of my management team, was that people would say, ooh, she made a mistake joining us. They barely knew me, right? I was there 6 months. She's going back to J&J. Or she's really, really sick. She's not going to come back. And so I thought, who better to leave the message behind with my team than me? So it took me about a dozen takes, but I videotaped a very short 1-minute video without a lot of detail to go to the teams around the world, and I was just open. I said I was diagnosed with breast cancer. I fully expect to be back. My leadership team and I have built this strategy over the last 6 months. I know you're ready to execute. We've got a team of people to help drive this forward, and I will see you soon. And I did this for me and for the team, right? So there was no story left behind. That wasn't one that I got to tell, but I completely underestimated the knock-on impact that would have on my team. They hadn't had a leader who was that open before. The management team sent me a pair of signed pink boxing gloves for my office that I have till today. They made giant banners in each sales meeting, we've got your back, and lots of emails about how they were going to hit their forecasts, budgets, quotas for the year for me. And that wasn't my intent, but it taught me this whole thing about living authentically and doing what's right for you. It taught me a lot that you have to really listen to your own voice, listen to your guidance and listen to your mentors, but listen to your own voice, because in the end, it just creates really powerful teams, and powerful teams deliver great results. So that is my living authentically story, and I think it's really how you respond that matters. So just a couple of other keynotes. How am I doing on time? Okay? Okay. So a couple of other keynotes. You know, I get the most frequent question, and I'm sure many of you leaders in the room get asked this. So tell me how you make your work and life balance. Well, balance implies that both sides of the scale weigh the same thing, right? And I know lots of leaders are talking about this today. But for me, it was really about choices. You like the cartoon? I don't know if you can read it, right? But it's ironic. It happens in today's world. So first thing is stop multitasking. I'm actually not very good at this. My husband has to remind me. I have to be reminded all the time. I can't sit at home and have a good conversation with my children and be on my iPhone. You just got to figure it out and be deliberate. I'm not great at it, but I'm working on it. And one of my mentors told me once, and this was, I think came into laser focus for me when I went through my cancer treatment, was think about your life as if you only had 5 things that you could focus on. Maybe it's 3, maybe it's 4, but start with the first most important, the second, keep that list. I still have that list. Sometimes it's with a sticky note on my computer, sometimes it's in the front of my book. But make sure that you know when to say no, because for me, these are the things that I want to say yes to. These are the things that matter. It sounds simple. We probably all have a similar top 5 list. But you've got to be able to say no to be able to bring those choices and the things that are important into your life. One of the really cool things I learned, we did this when I was at Boston Scientific, and I had never done it before. When you go to lead a new team, you bring a set of biases, of perspectives, of expectations that kind of come with you, that you've grown up with. And it's especially important if you go lead a new team that doesn't know you, or you go to a new company. Write down, not easy to do, but write down what you believe, what is your philosophy, what matters to you, what should your team expect that you're going to be focused on, and share it openly. Because I think, again, we bring these biases that if I just say something, that people are going to understand what's behind it. Sometimes I go to a new team and I ask questions where no leaders asked questions before. And they think, uh-oh, she's asking me about our sales commission plan. She doesn't trust me as a sales leader. She's a new leader. She's asking questions. That's not why I do it. And so it's a great thing. I think if you've never done this, I would leave you with this. This just happens to be mine. You know, what I value in leadership, my operating principles, you know, a vision, a relentless focus on getting there, people and talent first. I do believe this. Every headcount is golden. At the end of the day, I think there's 2 things that create the success of a team: the people that you hire and the pipeline for growth that you build. Nothing is more important than focus on those 2 things. But sharing my philosophy about how you get there is something that I found that's really impactful with new teams. So help people understand what you stand for. Today, I'm really blessed to be part of Henry Schein. And Tony, just one slight adjustment to what you said. Henry Schein's been a tremendously successful company, inclusive of the areas that I now have the honor of leading. And I just now have responsibility for these 3 different businesses. So I don't want folks to think that this was all brand new and Karen's done it. The team has had 85 plus years of success. We have a couple of tables full of our Henry Schein team here today. And I mentioned that one of the things that really get me going is working in healthcare. And I'm really pleased to be able to do that with the team and continue to look forward to taking us from our success that we've had and our continued success going forward. One of our big values at Henry Schein is really, and it's one of the organizations that Steve helps us spearhead with Jennifer Kim Fields and the team that's sitting here with us today, is really our Henry Schein Cares Foundation. One of the organizations that we support is the Canine Companions for Independence, which is a fabulous organization if you don't know them. We have one of their offices, groups is based here on Long Island. And this is, people who volunteer to devote their time, it's a full-time volunteer job, to raise puppies to help others live independently. And Henry Schein supports our veterinarians with food and supplies for the owners of these pets. So this is me today with our CEO, Stan Bergman, who's standing there with me, and Davy Jones, who runs a part of our connection to the universities for our U.S. animal health business. And I will end where I started, which is my guidance to this group today. I want to congratulate the honorees, and I look forward to the rest of the program. Thanks so much for having me.